Welcome to another episode of the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. I am your host, Giovanni, the Healthy Habits and Lifestyle Coach. Y'all, this is such a special episode. I'm so excited. I'm rocking my yellow, already rocking my yellow for endometriosis. It's Endometriosis Awareness Month. And I got Natalie here with me, y'all. Natalie with Meraki Life and Style. And man, y'all, she is such a whole vibe. And I can't wait until you hear so much of her story, but most importantly, her journey of strength that she's continuing because she's still here. So she's still living. So the journey keeps going. But yeah, I'm so excited. But before we dive into this episode, you already know what time it is. Vibe with me, y'all. Welcome to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. Yo, Miss Natalie, how you feeling today?
I am wonderful. Thank you so much, Giovanni. I appreciate you having me on your platform and sitting here and vibing with you. I appreciate you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.
I love you. Man, I love you so much, Miss Natalie. First, I was just so excited and grateful that I got to sit at your table, y'all. Table 4 was on and rocking at the Endo Black Gala 2023 in Baltimore. And it was just a beautiful experience. It was my first one. I was excited to actually be there physically because I've seen so much that was going on with Endo Black. Shout out to Endo Black and Lauren for doing all that she's doing, because that was the first organization I saw representation after my diagnosis of endometriosis back in 2020. And a lot of times it's in those special places that we have to find more information, more awareness, and figure out how to advocate for ourselves. So it's just beautiful to be in a place with a sea of yellow with black bodies. It was amazing. So grateful to be at that table. But before we get too into it, Miss Natalie, let them know who you are.
All right. Thank you. My name is Natalie Solomon. I am by day public health analyst and also a small business owner. My business is Meraki Life Style. I have a subsidiary, which is my empowerment arm, the Meraki Empowerment Collective, that I try to encourage, educate, and really speak to all of those things that come with women empowerment, one of which is endometriosis and what my journey has been with that. And I really just am here for women, cultural humility, and everything women's health advocacy as a public health practitioner. And that's just a little bit, I also do event decor and design to kind of integrate that with creating sacred spaces for those of us that are trying to heal from whatever that may ail us, and helping individuals envision what that can look like for them to have that safe and sacred space. So that's just a little snippet, and I'll get into a little bit more later.
So because you just talked about it, and that was one of the main things that blew my mind at the table when you were talking about the sacred spaces, and you was like, in your home, you've created this sacred space, and how important it was to heal. And I was like, oh my God, you got a sacred space in your home? Because so many people just do these small little spaces in their house for like a meditation pillow or like to hold their crystal. And you was like, no, I got a whole space, and it is dedicated just for healing. And I was like, what? Tell me more. Because that's what really, you were a vibe, but then when you told me what you were doing and what you had in your, I was like, texting my friend like, oh my God, she got a whole sacred space. It's like creating her home. I need a sacred space. Talk about the importance of having a sacred space, like the absolute need of having a sacred space for healing as a whole, but how you're so intentional with creating that space.
Well, just to give you a quick backdrop as to why I decided to set it up. I've been dealing with endo for over 25 years, and I was fortunate enough to still go through and come through a bunch of surgeries. But there was a space in my bed, in my basement, that going through, I guess I'm up to like 14 surgeries now, between different healthcare ailments and brain surgery and a botched hysterectomy and all of those things. And it was overwhelming. It was just too much. And, sitting in your room crying and being upset about what you're going through was one thing, but being able to be intentional about where you create a plan to heal, a plan to just be, was something that I thought of. I was doing meditation workshops with some of my girlfriends. I had started a podcast, and around the time of COVID, self-care in the time of COVID, I'm big into self-care. And I thought about it. I had done some vision boarding workshops, and I decided, I said, you know what? I have a space in the basement. And on my vision board, there's different spaces that represent me. And I went into this space in the basement and I said, you know what? I'm going to create a space for me that reflects where I am and what I'm bringing to the table for myself outside of anybody else. And each wall of my room is like its own vision board. One wall is my AKA stuff. I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. And then my back wall is my initials, and then also a blurb of what my company means, Meraki, which is basically the essence of putting yourself into your work through your soul, your love, and your creativity. And then I have another wall, which is all my artwork from my travels, and I have a drafting table because I paint. So while I was recovering from all of my things in the hospital, I was painting, and it helped, mellow me out. And then I have an ancestral altar and a prayer space, which is in the front wall of my space. And it was a place where I could sit and cry. And the furniture in there is my grandmother's furniture, who recently passed away. So it's also very sacred to me as well, because I feel close to her in that space. And then any other ancestral venerations and whatnot that I do. And for all those that have gone on and kind of have communed with myself and with my source, and, yell and cry and be like, why am I still going through this? And, it was important because I journal. I've been journaling most of my life. And it was a quiet space for me to meditate, for me to sleep, for me to draw, for me to paint, for me to work on anything that I needed to. And those were things that helped me cope with what I was dealing with, because I didn't have any control of what I was going through. Everything was happening to me. So I said, what can I do to create a space where I can control the narrative, can control some little bit of what I'm going through to give me some sense of solace? And it started out really honestly with a Tupperware, like a big little Tupperware thing, a container and a sheet and a pillow and some artwork. And that's what it was. And I said, well, I think I can like zhuzh this up a little bit. I love to decorate. And, I have my singing bowls and my incense, my crystals, and all of those things. And they each have significance to me in some way, and gave me a place to actually put books. I have books all over in my office. I have two, three huge bookshelves and stuff. But it allowed me to put up some of my vision boards in one space. It allowed me to have books that I could read about what I was trying to understand, what I was going through my ailments. And then a couch that was my grandmother's that I could just lay on and sleep, and it made sense to me. And it's always evolving. I can change it and update it. And not everybody's allowed in there, for sure. It's definitely my sacred space. The vibe changes when you walk over the threshold, and it's a calming space and a prayer space for me. And I had to be intentional, because when you're at the end of your rope and you're in the hospital and you are laying on the floor in pain, and just wondering, why is this happening? Why does this keep happening? You need that space for yourself. And I really wanted it to be separate from my everyday surroundings, so that I could go in there and leave it on the ground, leave it in the space, and be like, okay, I'm recharged, and now I can go out and face my regular world, So that's where
I love it. I love it so much. And I've never heard anyone create such a space until you were telling me about it. And I think I love that you have your grandma's furniture in it. I know we talked about it a while back. And it made me think about it when you were saying it. It made me think about it when I was talking to my line sister earlier this week. We did a podcast recording too. And I'm a Delta. Shout out to Delta Sigma Theta. And she was talking about that we lost two line sisters, 2 and 2 years. And they were younger than younger than me. And we were talking about the fact that you said you journal, right? You've been journaling at such a young age. And I never really got into journaling. And so for my line sister's birthday, when she passed away, my line sister was like, you should write her a letter. And I've never done that before. And it was very therapeutic. And of course, the whole time I'm writing it, I'm like, I just crying, like water just flowing. I got to keep like going to get tissues. Like, oh my God, I did not know this was going to happen. Like, I'm thinking this is going to be like fun, energetic. And then when you talk about it and you're actually doing it, she was like, but it made you feel better, didn't it? And I was like, it did. And she was like, because energy never dies.
Yeah.
And I was like,
just transfers.
Exactly. And so when you talk about like your sacred space in the basement, and you have your walls of intention with all these different vibes and energy levels that you're creating in your healing space.
Excuse me.
She also, no, you're okay. She also has like them in her workspace as well to provide her with that same type of energetic, that energy that's fueling her. And I just loved it. And I appreciate you for going in depth with your space, because some people, for some reason, they don't like to share what they do personally to heal. And I feel like when you're not as vocal and visible with your healing, you're missing out on so many people that need your help and your guidance, because they don't even know where to start. Like they have no idea on where to start. And so I think that's a big thing for me. But I love that you broke that down. Journaling most of your life, and you have these books. What is like your best book for someone who's going through a challenging time, trying to heal, they're frustrated? What book would you recommend for them as they navigate through this?
Excuse me. Oh my goodness. I have a book of prayers that's women's prayers. I can't remember the name of it right now. Where I go to for, it's like a daily devotional book, and I can't remember the title of it, but I bought it for myself while I was going through all I was going through. And then my sister came to visit me, and she bought it for me as well. And it was so crazy. I was like, did you just get this from my office? She's like, no, I brought it for you. And it was just a vibe that we were on the same page of getting through women. And I'll have to get the book for you. I'll give you the name. And it's nothing, it's not super overly religious. It's just some affirmations to kind of get you through the day. And with that point, I just became part of an anthology for a book called I'm Worthy, where I thought of some affirmations that I put in, co-authored, that kind of came into play for that. And I pulled from that book, and I pulled from my own experiences. And it's so important because those affirmations resonated with me. And I know this kind of like, kind of over the top and blasé, and affirmations are the buzzword for everything. And it's what you do with them. It's how you internalize them. And if you write them for yourself, think of ones that you can write for yourself and pull those together. And it helps me to kind of collaborate and generate some of those things on my own, on how to face the day. And it's not too heavy. Some are like, oh my gosh, this is a little, whoa. And some are like, you're awesome. Okay, great. Yeah, okay, I am. That's great. You made it through today, and some, it doesn't have to be wordy. And I like that about the book. Some of them have stories about perseverance and overcoming different things, little blurbs. But at the moment, I can't, it's escaping me the name of the book. But I know it's a little purple book with little pretty flowers and stuff like that on it. So, but I'll get that for you.
Yes, ma'am. I appreciate you sharing it. And I think, and I know when you say like affirmations, blah, 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 sometimes how people feel like with intentions. Oh, you say intentions. Yeah. Okay, intention, whatever. There's so many things within the healing space, if done right, is now sounding cliche, because so many people are overusing the terms without having some real power behind it, in a effective kind of way. So I get it, but affirmations are so important. At my school, we started to incorporate them in the announcements. And I think it's important because it's an all-girls middle school. And during that time, there's so many different, phases that they're going through, and hormones, and just that social space that they're in. It's a lot. And if you're not hearing people tell you all the things that you should know that is you regularly and constantly, you're going to start believing whatever thoughts are coming in your head, what other people are telling you about yourself. And it's just making your voice louder than anyone else's.
Yeah,
And
that
I feel like
self-talk is crucial. That is crucial. A lot of my girlfriends know, some of my girlfriends call me the shaman of our tribe because I'm always like, with the self-talk, wonderful stuff. And I will be the first person, whether I know you or not, if I hear you talking about yourself in a negative way, I'll be like, whoa, whoa, we don't talk like that over here. And they're like, I don't know you. I don't care if I don't know you. That, what you just said, is not appropriate. You do not talk to yourself like that. You have to listen to how you sound, because other people hear it and they will believe it as much as you do. And it plays in the back of your mind. And there was a time, excuse me, I was at one of my soror's events, a birthday party. We were out eating and folks were ordering like appetizers or something like that. And I think there was like a pork slider or something to that effect. And she was like, oh, I think I'm going to get that, because since I'm just like a little piggy and little fat anyway. I was like, I don't know you, but we don't talk like that. I said, how can you? And she's like, excuse me? I said, I don't appreciate hearing you talking so negatively, the self-deprecating talk. And then my other girlfriend jumped in. She was like, I know you don't know her, but we don't talk like that in front of Natalie because she will hem you up. And the lady was like, what? She's like, yeah, she's kicked me out of her house before because I've been so self-deprecating and she doesn't want that energy in her house. And she was like, what? Are you serious? And at the end of the day, she pulled me aside and she said, thank you. I appreciate that. I'm going to work on it. And I know that I shouldn't talk about myself like that. And I'm going to be more intentional about it. So thank you. And
I think we don't do enough of that. We don't do enough of checking people when they're seeing themselves in these low forms.
Yeah.
I do the same thing. Like if my mom says something and I'll be like, why are you talking about my mama like that? Like, you need to get that together. And like, I'm talking to my mom and she say that like nah. Like, and I'll say that. I say it all the time. And then if my student says something like, don't talk about my students like that, because that's not the type. And now I'll go into that and they're just kind of looking like,
because we have enough going on. We have enough against us as it is. And you showing up as a Black woman anyway, that alone. And then you hear all the negative tropes that we get every day and have to deal with. And now you're going to talk about yourself too? No. Not on my watch. Not on my. If I hear you, no, you're going to hear from me.
I wholeheartedly agree. And I think it's a beautiful thing for someone to love you enough, even if they don't know you, to be able to check you on that self-talk. Because it all starts in your mind. What you believe about yourself, how you feel about yourself, what you think about yourself is a mindset, and it's how you see yourself. And that needs to shift if you're going to really, truly love you for who you really are and who you know you can be and what you were created to be. So I love that we started on this vibe, because I love you and I love the vibes that you bring, but it wasn't always this vibrant, Natalie, because you done been through a whole lot and you still going through what you're going through. But because it was the Endo Gala that brought us together, let's first start with this endometriosis journey. Because I feel like I remember you telling me you had like 5 different endometriosis surgeries.
Yes.
Like you've really gone through, like, take me through your endo journey. What did this even look like? How did it come about? There you go. Come on.
Ooh, my goodness.
We started high. We started high for a reason, Miss Natalie.
Yes. Sis, let me tell you, so I started my cycle when I was 10 years old. And those periods were like nobody's business. I said, Lord, what did I do to deserve this? Because I would always leave school. My father always had to come and pick me up, and I would throw up and be in the nurse's office all day. Couldn't do much. Like my father, God love him. I'm a daddy's girl, and I would just be laying in the hallway, and he would lay in the hallway with me because I just could not move. And as the years went on, my family were Jamaican, and we, culturally, there's certain things you talk about and other things you don't. And it was just kind of like, well, you got your cycle, you have cramps. But my cramps were on another level. And this went on for years. You know, it wasn't until I was in college and I was 19 that I had a cyst rupture. And I was my my cramps and stuff were bad. And I was at the time in the dorm with my boyfriend at the time was in the middle of the night, and a cyst ruptured, and I woke up and collapsed on the floor and was like screaming in pain. And he called his line brother and was like, something's wrong with my girlfriend. I got rushed to the hospital, and they did not know what was wrong with me for hours. They thought it was my appendix. And, you know, they're not going to give you pain meds if it's your appendix, because you can die from a ruptured appendix. So they were trying to figure out what was going on. They called in all these surgeons. All the while, I'm sitting here on the gurney rolling back and forth. And then finally, they're like, well, we think it's this. And they did like the ultrasound and all of that. And then they're like, well, we're not sure yet. And then they said, well, we think it might be endo, because we've ruled out all of this. And when they finally came to the conclusion, they're like, we think you have some cysts, and you have one of 12, and you have some on one ovary, and, you know, the remain 7 on one ovary, and the remaining on your right ovary. And one of them has ruptured. And that's what's going on with you. And now we need to definitively diagnose it with surgery. So that was my first foray into that. And it just started the journey where I ended up having surgery after surgery after surgery, because I didn't understand it. It kept coming back. And then I had to go into, they put me on Lupron, which is a drug that is not for women. It was a drug created for men for prostate cancer. But one of the benefits was to quell the hormonal response from women in your endometriosis and your estrogen, so that it puts you in menopause. And so, yeah, the symptoms stopped for the endo, but the side effects were horrible, horrible. I had to leave school. I had to drop out of school for a semester or two because the side effects were so bad, and I'm still having pain. And then they figured out after the first surgery, I was diagnosed with stage 4 endometriosis, which is the most severe, not necessarily the most painful, but for me it was, because you can have stage 1 and have the same level of pain as someone with stage 4. It goes to the intensity of how many endometriomas that you have. And through all of my surgeries, all of my fallopian tubes were stuck to my bladder, to my bowel, to everything, you know, and they would take them apart and put it back, and it would grow back, and take them apart and it would grow right back. So those years of going through over 22 different OBGYNs.
My goodness.
22, over 22, to understand what was going on. I was misdiagnosed with pelvic inflammatory disease. And for those that understand what that means, that is a STI, sexually transmitted infection. And that's what their go-to. And I'm like, I said, why would you automatically think that? Come to find out, as a Black woman, they're predisposed because of bias, implicit bias, and everything else that's going on. They were quicker to diagnose me, try to say, oh, it's that, or irritable bowel syndrome, not endo. They tried to think of everything else but endo. And as if to say,
Do you think it's because they don't know enough about endo, or were they just trying to?
I think it's a little bit of both, because there are a lot of doctors that don't know.
They don't.
There are a lot of doctors that do not know. I have an endo doctor.
And just throw things out all the time, and expect you to go with it. So like, if you don't do enough of your own research to know what's going on with your body, then you're going to believe whatever they tell you, and you're just going to follow along with whatever they say is what you need to do. Exactly. And I've seen that happen too many times. But for you to have to go to 22 different OBGYNs, shout out to my 22 founders, but 22 OBGYNs to try to figure this out. And I'm with you. Like, we are testaments today. Like, y'all are looking at the screen. If you're looking at the video version on YouTube right now, you have 2 stage 4 endometriosis conquerors.
Yes.
This one did not have the chronic absolute pain since the age of 10. No, I did not. Stage 4 stuff was all merged together, all on different body organs. It was everywhere. But it was my ruptured cyst that had me laying down in my bathroom floor and it only happened twice. Chronic pain, debilitating, out the way, but you've had it all your life since starting at the age 10. For me, it was painful bowel movements every period.
Yes.
But
Oh my
I had
goodness.
no idea that had anything to do with endometriosis. I just thought my cramps are more in this area than the other area, and this is supposed to be normal, that we're in pain when it's our period. And that, again, too, is not normal.
Right.
Period pain is not normal in any kind of way, no matter what people tell you. The beautiful part, though, Natalie, that I loved in that story that you just gave about your endometriosis beginning journey and your challenges, was that your father came and just laid on the floor with you in the hallway while you're at school. That, to me, was so beautiful, because a part of the podcast, because I told you I lost 2 line sisters in 2 years. So that means they're not here for their girls, right? And so they're going to have menstrual cycles if one is already having it. And it's like, how do we bring fathers into this conversation to be compassionate, to be a part of what's really going on, to be knowledgeable? Because this isn't something that you should only be talking to with your mom, because you might have similar experiences, because your bodies are similar and alike. This is something that dads could still be a part of, because it's your child and it's your child's health. And it's time out for separating aspects of health where you're going to bring the dad into the conversations and let him take his hands off.
Agree.
And so I love the fact that you were able to have that experience with your dad and him to be so comforting. Did he know really what was going on? He just knew that his baby girl was in pain. And so
they knew that, because he always had to come and pick me up from school. And fortunately, the type of job that he had a swing shift. So he was able to do that for me. And then my mom, he would pass off to my mom, and, shout out to my parents. They're amazing. Have been so supportive through all of my healthcare challenges. And they hurt just like I hurt. And, the pain of them and me seeing the pain in them, seeing me in pain, I think also spurs on me becoming such an advocate for myself and promoting that and making sure that I speak out, because I was a very quiet, introverted child because of a lot of this, and my self-esteem and, and getting all of these things and developing earlier. And, I went to where I live. We're pretty much the only Black family where we are to this day, and having those conversations of self-care and self-esteem, and then you're different, and you add all those things in, and then, developing before everybody else as well. Who are you going to talk to about it? And the school nurse, well, whatever. Sometimes they're not knocking school nurses, but some of them were just not as helpful as they could have been. But yeah, I think, my father did know that stuff was kind of wrong. My mom had always had cramps too, but my father is so amazing and attentive to my mom and everything, that it was only natural that, she's the queen and my sister and I are the princesses. He'd send us a text about that just the other day, how my princess is doing, and he takes that to heart, and he makes sure that he expects that we will be able to have that in our life and take care of ourselves. So we know how to expect and ask for care, and how to communicate what kind of care we would need in those types of situations. And I think that's paramount to when you bring those conversations to bear, because he has 2 sisters, so he was comfortable around women to an extent, and he's the eldest, so he was a big brother to take care of everybody as well. And he's very nurturing. Our personalities are very similar in that regard, very nurturing. We're laid back and nurturing, and it was a blessing in that regard that he's like, of course, why wouldn't I step in and take care of my baby girl in this way? And it really helped me with so many other things going through my life and what I'm feeling. And he's always like, are you taking care of yourself? Are you sleeping? Are you doing this? And and it makes a difference on how you see yourself and what level of importance you put on yourself and your care, to make sure that you're taking heed to listening to your body and what it is that you need to do to take care of yourself.
And I think that's big. People don't listen to their body. And I don't know why, because sometimes I feel like it should be the loudest thing that you hear. If it's not your own voice, it should definitely be your body. I was talking to one of my coworkers yesterday, and he was telling me about this juice recipe, because I'm all into juice and me and my mom love it. And he was showing me this recipe that someone posted on Facebook, and he was like, okay, so which vegetable do I need to do? Because you told me never just do a whole bunch of fruit. Like, that's too much sugar. And I was like, look at you listening to me.
Look at you.
Right. That's what I said. I gave him some stuff. He was like, yeah, I'm trying. And then he was like, but I ate a burger the other day, and man, did that thing mess me up. But I said, why do you keep doing that to yourself? And he said, I don't know why I don't want to listen. And that's just the most recent experience. Like, there's plenty of people that don't want to listen to their bodies. They'll continue to eat whatever it is they want to eat, knowing it's going to make them feel bad. But it goes back to you saying, like, listen to your body. Even when it comes to sleeping. Right. Like, sometimes, and I'm not saying this is for everybody, like if you got insomnia or night sweats while you're sleeping, you got endometriosis, but that was me. And I didn't see it as an issue. I just thought, oh, well, my granddaddy, he sweats in his sleep, you know? Right. So I'm like, me sweating and getting, you know, I mean, I used to wake up drenched.
Oh, I know. I'm right there with you.
I'm like, what is going on? And I'm in my 30s. So, you know, it's not like, oh God, I'm going through, you know, the next phase.
Change.
Like, yes. I'm like, oh my goodness, I got to change the sheets almost to that point, you know, how much you're like sweating out. And I'm like, what is happening? Even to the point where it's like when you can't sleep, like as soon as you wake up, it's like, okay, how can I go back to sleep? Like, I just want to turn over. I was just getting uncomfortable. I now need to take this off because I'm sweating so much. And it's like the insomnia, the night sweats. There's so many things that's happening that you just want to chunk up to. Oh, maybe I ate too late. Oh, maybe I had, you know, too many salty foods, and it's trying to get out of me. Like, we make up so many different excuses instead of just listening and then reacting.
And we know what excuses are, so you know.
And do. So you had these 5 surgeries for endo, Miss Natalie. Was endometriosis the only thing that was happening to you?
No, not unfortunately, no. I do think because my system was compromised and my immune system, you know, was compromised with that, I ended up being susceptible to a number of other things. As the years progressed, I ended up having to, with all the adhesions and everything, because, you know, I ended up having emergency gallbladder surgery. And I think it had to do because I had changed my diet and became, you know, I wasn't vegan, but, you know, I was on my way and trying to be more holistic with what I was putting in my body and everything like that. And I think my body was like, what are we doing? And as things progressed, you know, the cysts kept to grow. And then they found my 3rd surgery, they found 2 fibroids. And at the time, there were tiny, tiny fibroids. They hadn't diagnosed me with adenomyosis. They diagnosed me with adenomyosis in my 5th surgery, or fourth surgery. So each surgery, it's like they kept finding other things. So I had the triple threat trifecta: adenomyosis, fibroids, and endometriosis, and having everything set together.
I have a question, Ms. Natalie. When you had the surgery, was this a excision specialist, like someone who really studied and knew exactly what they were doing when they went in?
Not the first 2, no. I think they knew what. I don't think I didn't know to even go to an excision specialist. I had no idea even to explore that at the time, because this was over 20 years ago, where you could barely get anybody to talk about it. You know, and I had joined the Women's Council in DC about endo, and NIH had something specifically on endo, and then I never heard anything else about it again. You know, it just like, you know, flitted off into the universe, and then at that time I was like, so we're not going to talk about it? No, okay, you know. And then life was happening and caused me to be incapacitated on numerous occasions. And then each time I got diagnosed with that, it just got worse and worse. But the fibroids, that started a new chapter in my life that led to a whole bunch of other things, unfortunately, because before then I had sinus I had 3 sinus surgeries. I had polyps in my nose. And then they put me, for the longest time, they couldn't figure out what was going on. So they put me on steroids for almost a year. And during that time, the fibroid said, hey, what's going on? I think we need to get big up in here. And they grew. And they grew. And it caused some other complications. And I'm a dancer. I'm a trained dancer. I used to teach dance and be in a professional African dance company years ago. So I've always had a flat stomach. And after one of my fourth or fifth surgery, you know, time had gone on. I had been on the steroids and everything. Excuse me. Notice I had a little pooch on my tummy. And I was like, what's going on here? And then it was hard, and then it started hurting. Went to the doctor. Excuse me. And at this point, I had engaged with Endo Black, and I had been involved. And so I had gotten one of their doctors from them that was recommended. And I went to them, and they said, okay, well, this is what's going on. You have a large fibroid that's the size of a melon, and you have 10 to 15 surrounding it, little ones right now. And because the little ones are pulling the blood from the big one, it's becoming necrotic, and it's looking like it's dying. And the cells are presenting themselves as abnormal. So we don't know if you have cancer. So we need to go and do a hysterectomy now because we don't know what's going on. And when they went in to do that, they did the surgery in a whole bag and everything. And it was supposed to be a day, outpatient surgery. Well, because I had so many adhesions from my previous surgeries, my uterus was up under my diaphragm like an eggplant. And my fallopian tubes were up near my uterus. And when they were trying to excise my fallopian tubes, they cut my ureter instead. And that caused yet another phase of my healthcare challenges that were all linked to endo. It's like endo was the impetus, and then all of these things just came after that. And it caused, and still does cause me quite a bit of pain. So they cut my ureter so high up that they had to pick up my bladder and move it over to the right side of my body to try to re-implant the ureter into my bladder. And I've had 3 surgeries to correct it, which were all unsuccessful. And so because of that, now I have, I had chronic pyelonephritis, which is the most severe case of a kidney infection. I've been hospitalized for that 12 times, almost died 3 because I was septic from it, because it was inflaming my kidneys and causing all this other havoc and what have you. And during all this, so I'm dealing with the fibroids, dealing still with the endo. And then the bladder reorganization. And during all this time, there comes, after my sinus surgery, I'm leaving. They did a sinus surgery that was close to my eye. And one day I'm leaving my house and I lose peripheral vision on my right side. And in front of me, I can see my fingers, but I can't see my hand. And I have to turn around and go back into my house. I call my doctor. I call my ENT. I said, something's wrong. And she thought she nicked something in my eye, close to my eye. And she tells me, Clay, we're going to come in and I want you to go to the neurologist. I go to the neurologist and they're like, oh, you have a brain tumor. You have a meningioma. Now, this is all going on at the same time that I'm dealing with the endo, that I'm dealing with the fibroids, that I'm dealing with the transected ureter, all on top of each other. And they cannot do anything concurrently because they need to stabilize me. And I'm going back and forth for surgeries. And my one surgery ended up I had a ruptured hematoma, and I had to have a blood transfusion and another emergency surgery, all of these things, while I'm still dealing with the endo. And now they're like, well, we can't operate on your brain tumor because your kidneys and your ureter situation is dire. We can't operate because you can die. So we had to pick. So I had to put off the brain surgery until I was stabilized with the kidney stuff. all while going back to the my endo doctor, and they're like, yeah, you still have endometriosis, by the way, and it's still growing. So what do you want to do? So juggling all of these things, you know, and trying to navigate through this, and still dealing with the pain. And now I'm still going to the hospital for my endo flares, you know, at this point, and going to the doctor, and they don't believe you with your
Miss
pain.
Natalie, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a whole lot. So tell me, where's your mindset with all of this when you're having to make a choice? Leave the brain tumor alone. Let me get this other stuff together before I can get to the brain tumor. What's your mindset? What does this look like for you right now?
It was devastating, honestly. Because I got diagnosed in 2018, but I didn't have surgery until 2021. Because I had all these other things going on that I had to take care of to stabilize me. So it was heart-wrenching. It was devastating to decide, well, what am I able to do versus what I can do? What can my body handle with all of this going on? And going to the doctors to be like, well, what am I supposed to do? I had to go and do some research. I did, you know, made appointments with the Mayo Clinic. My doctor's I ended up going to the Hopkins. I was at Walter Reed. I would, you know, several different, it kind of was, you get into problem solving mode and you have to separate. Well, yeah, I'm in pain today, but what is in front of me that I can control? Because all of this is happening to me at this point. So what can I do to effectively address the elements that I can actually control? And that involves educating myself, doing my research about how all of these interplayed. And I still believe that endo still has a lot to do with all of this because of it being an autoimmune disease. You know, I truly believe how my body was responding to the medications, how things were growing, because my system had been compromised for so long that I think connecting some of those for me. And I'm not a doctor, not yet. I'll be eventually someday. I'm gonna get my PhD, but not right now. But I'm not a medical doctor. I'm in public health. But I really think taking the time to pause, taking a beat, and looking at what are these elements can I control? I can educate myself, number one. I can make sure I do my research on the doctors that I'm going to speak with and find out what are my options to move forward. And then number three, what other things can I do for myself in managing stress, sleeping, all of those things, doing fun stuff. Excuse me. Excuse me. So I can mitigate some of this while I'm going through it and finding out how can I address, and then with a clear mind so that I'm not emotionally responding to some of these things, because we already know where our hormones are all over the place with this, because I went through all the surgeries. I've been on Mirena twice. I've been on Lupron. I've been on Depo. You name it. I've experimented. I've been on them. So you really have to sit and figure out those, those three things. What can you do? Do your research, talk to other women that are going through it. Don't hide it, talk about it. That's one thing, culturally, this is one of the things I talk about in public health, that you look at how unspoken cultural norms can affect how you receive care, how you inquire about care, and how you advocate for yourself. And certain things you don't talk about because it's in the house and it's private. We have to dispel that, because you're doing a disservice to yourself and other women that are coming behind you. It's so key, but you really got to make sure you embrace those things and try to share. Like you had mentioned earlier, it's so important to share. My mom initially was like, why are you posting on Facebook your business and telling everybody what's going on with your lady parts? That's not anybody's business. And I said, but mommy, I wish someone would have told me, when I found Endo Black, and Lauren found me because I was in all their endo support groups, and, they weren't necessarily speaking to what I needed to hear because of the health disparities that are going on in the healthcare system and the social determinants of health and all those things that are direct impact to us and how we get care at the hospital, because people don't believe us, you know, about our pain. They think we're making it up. They think it's drug-seeking behavior. And, you know, I'm in healthcare and I'm on the gurney trying to explain to the doctor while I'm writhing around in pain. I'm a public health analyst. I'm a public health practitioner. I understand I'm not having drug-seeking behavior. I work in opioids. I understand the breakdown of X, Y, and Z. But I can tell you right now, this little bit of Tylenol that you're giving me ain't it. Ain't it. And I'm not doing anything beyond what I should be asking for comfort. Why are you, you know, oh my goodness.
It's frustrating. And you're not
yeah.
even the first person to come on here to talk about that. And I hate that there's this, I don't know if we call it stereotype. I hate that anytime we are in the ER or we're rushed for something and we're saying we're in pain, all of a sudden it's a psychotic thing.
Yes.
All of a sudden we're crazy. All of a sudden you just want pain medicine because you have an issue that you're trying to mask with something else, or you just want the drugs. And sometimes, because Miss Kennedy, Miss C talked about it on her episode of endometriosis episode back in January, and it was crazy. And she got hers. Remember, you were talking about scar tissue and the adhesions.
Mm-hmm.
They cut her for a C-section in the same spot after having each one of her kids, and she had like 5 kids. So for her, she felt as though the doctors, because they were uneducated with how they did her, had helped her deliver her babies, gave her the endometriosis. And then when she's telling you about the pain, you're making her out to be crazy. You know, now you need to go see a psychiatrist. You don't need, and it's just like, I hate that we're being navigated through this system. And I love that you spoke on this. Like, I'm a public health analyst. I'm telling you what's really happening, what's going on with me. But you also went back, which I love, those things when you had all of this stuff going on. You said you first had to do education. Then you had to go and actually do your research. So when you go have these informed discussions with your specialist, you're coming with information that they can't just tell you whatever it is, and you don't push back. You don't ask, why do you believe this? You don't say, hey, well, we need to go through this testing, this screening, this type of imaging to make sure what you think it is really what you say it is. So we have evidence. And then you talked about, what can I do within my own lifestyle? What am I in control of? And that's the beautiful part of why I went the realm of healthy habits and lifestyle coaching, because there's so many things that you can control in regards to your well-being. You might not be able to heal your whole endometriosis to a point where now it's gone, because there is no cure. But there are ways to put some symptoms in remission. There are ways to still make you feel better most days than feeling bad most days. And I love that. And you talked about stress management. Stress kills, and that's just off the top of the dome, and nobody wants to talk about that. But if you're not doing what you need to do to ground yourself and manage that stress, and you're allowing so many other people to overwhelm you with that stress, they are pretty much putting you in a toxic situation where you're going down. No matter whatever else your body is doing that you feel is against you, you are allowing this. So you have control over your stress management. And the beautiful part about this, y'all, is that's why I wanted us to start with high vibes. And I wanted you to hear what she's done to be intentional with her healing, because all of that helps her manage stress. Because you just heard what she went through in a short amount of time within years, and she has to still make her decisions for herself while navigating a healthcare system as a Black woman, with something a lot of people don't know a lot about, as a public health analyst who knows enough research and what's supposed to be happening, that's trying to tell other people about their own job.
Right.
Like that's what I didn't want anybody to miss. And honestly, which I'm glad you're saying this, Miss Natalie, because again, this is another testament to 2 different people on the screen with the same type of diagnosis. Not only did I have stage 4 endometriosis, which is why I asked you about your excision specialist, which again, that's time has developed, so people know more about it. But for me, it was 2020, right before the pandemic. I had my laparoscopic surgery. The excision specialist went in. He's really specialized in like IVF, fertility and stuff. He thought he was going to be in there for an hour. It took him 4 hours because he had no idea it was as extensive as it was, because it was stage 4. Not only was it stage 4 adenomyosis, I had adenomyosis on the left side of my pelvic area. And then he found 2 small fibroids. I had no idea I had fibroids. And so one surgery, I was to get all 3. It took you 5 to get all three with other complications.
Yeah.
Again, you're seeing us as vocal and visible Black women talking about our journeys because it's important for you to know what the journeys look like, because they're totally different and can still lead up to the same diagnosis. And then your body talks to you in so many different ways. Both of us were dancers. Both of us. I was dancing before the age of 2. So I'm used to a flat stomach as well.
Right.
But I'm thinking, as I'm getting older, that, oh, well, I'm not dancing no more. So maybe my stomach is just having it. But then it was to the point where sometimes I was like, oh, I feel like I might be like 2 months, 3 months pregnant. And I'm like putting my hand on my stomach because I've never, been pregnant before. And and little did I know, this is bloat. Where's this bloat coming from?
Man, that endo bloat.
It's no joke, right? And I'm sitting here thinking like, well, whew. Is this just my period? There's no way you should be expanding like this. Like, what is happening?
None.
And my mom will be like, I'll show her, I'll be like, Mom, I look like I'm pregnant. She was like, Giovanni, stop playing. Stop trying to poke your stomach out.
I'm not.
Don't be like them other people. I ain't poking. I ain't playing.
Right. Exactly. It's just doing it on its own.
Right. I'm not playing.
It on its own.
I'm not playing. But I just appreciate you for walking us through that story. And again, like your mom said, why are you telling everybody your business? And I think it's time out to hide. It's time out to be private with certain things, because we have too many people that are struggling. They're struggling in silence for invisible illnesses. Yes. And so if we're not loud and we're not vocal, you'll never know that these invisible illnesses exist. You'll never hear your body and tune and train your ear to figure out what might really be going on. And you'll just continue to ignore it because you can't see it. And for me, having that surgery, Miss Natalie, it was like, I didn't know all that stuff was going on in my body. I didn't know fallopian tubes were being all up here and had to be restructured, and large cyst is on my ovary, on my right ovary. I didn't know any of all of these things was happening. I thought I was good. Like, I felt like I looked good. I was feeling good. But when that debilitating creeps up on you out of nowhere, you don't know what to do. And you don't even know really how to explain it. And if you're not around someone who really loves you to really hate to see you in that pain, they will chunk it off as to, oh, well, I don't really know what's wrong with you. Or, oh, it might be so-and-so, and my mama had that. You'll be all right.
Right. Dismissive.
Who are you? Like, get on about this space.
Exactly.
Right. That's the crazy thing. And because you had to go through 22 different OBGYNs to finally get to a place where you need to get to, but you're still having to navigate and figure out what's going on because endometriosis is so challenging. Yes. That's where we differ again. My sorority sister was my nurse practitioner. Who did she work underneath? My sorority sister, who was her, the primary care physician in a small clinic. Something's wrong with me. JoJo, we don't have that stuff in here. You need to go get imaging. You need to go to the ER. This is the second time it's happened. The first time we thought it was just food poisoning. Like, we don't know what's going on. Second time, we need to see what's really happening. Go to the ER. They do the ultrasound. They do the CTs. Now, all of a sudden, they can see this large cyst on my, well, we don't really know what that is. We might want to put you in the hospital. Let me go to my OBGYN. Send me home. Let me go to my OBGYN and let's really figure this thing out before you just hospitalize me after being in the ER. Like, that's what we're not going to do. But because I knew my healthcare providers and they knew me and loved me before they saw me as just a patient, they heard me. And they
that's
directed
important,
me
the hearing. Am I being seen? Am I being heard?
That's so the beautiful part about it that everybody doesn't get. And I said, well, if I was favored enough and grateful enough to have this type of experience to know what has happened, I do not have the right to sit somewhere and be quiet and see everybody else suffer. Again, same extensive endometriosis all over the body, two totally different experiences, a huge fight, and someone who had people fighting already on my back.
Right.
And to be able to go to that excision specialist and trust him only because guess what else? Sorority sister that was an OBGYN in the area could vouch that he knew what he was doing. So I could trust my body with it. That you don't get that everywhere.
You don't.
And that's why I'm like, I cannot not create a space for us to really start talking about these things. And then I work with middle school girls.
Oh, yes.
Black and brown. I do not. who was at our table. You saw that, right? Who was
Yes.
sitting on the right? You was on my left. Who was on my right? An 8th
Right.
grader. A Black 8th grader,
Grader.
newly diagnosed with endometriosis. And how did she know it was endo? Because of her mother. Had her mother not be such visible advocate and know what she's doing inside this baby wouldn't have known what was going on. She would have been just like Miss Natalie in the middle of the hall at the school with the nurse, and the nurse just thinking she don't want to be in school, that every month her period come on. Right. She just don't want to be here. She just want to be laid in the bed.
Yes. So many dynamics. It's so multifaceted. So many dynamics. But it's also an opportunity. It presents opportunities for entry. It creates opportunities to educate in unique ways that are more palatable to the particular population that we're talking to, you know, and how do we engage these conversations? How do we insert these conversations and have them as part just as much as any other puberty talk that you have in school? It should be part and parcel of that, so that these young ladies know it just shouldn't just be, oh, it's that time, Mother Nature came to visit, but also it's both and. This is also a possibility. These are some things that you may need to look at. How is your diet? What are you doing at this age? What is your level of exercise and physical activity? What is your stress level? Because, you know, these kids nowadays, they got their own level of stress that I don't think we had when we were growing up.
I said the same thing yesterday and we were talking about it. And I know some of these kids are off the chain. And they can be rude and disrespectful. And we talked about this before we got on here. You can go low. When we go low, we're going to scrub the ground all the way.
And to the bedrock.
And they try you like that. And I didn't go because, you know, I know you're going through some things. You don't know how to manage your emotions. I'm here to be a representative of what you should be. So I'm supposed to be the example.
Yeah, exactly.
But I was just like, some of these kids, you just have to give them grace, because what they're going through at the age that they're going through, you couldn't handle that.
Not even.
You can barely handle the way life is life in you right now as 20, 30, 40-year-olds. And you sitting here talking about how these kids are and what they're unable to do and how they're unable to perform when you don't know what they're going through and what's happening. No. You first have to start with relationship building.
Yes, that rapport, that trust. It's
because
imperative.
You want them to perform and do this and do that. Everything's systematic. But at the end of the day, create a system to where you're being intentional about the relationships that you're building and you're getting to know your kids. Because if these kids are going from home to home, trauma to trauma, and they have no mechanisms on how to cope, how to process, you should just be happy you can lay eyes on them and you see them today.
And that trauma point is so important.
Go in.
How your body responds to trauma is how certain things manifest in your physical space. When at work, we just finished doing this study on Black women and HIV. I work in the HIV field, and just looking at trauma-informed care is something that needs to be, I think, more implemented with our younger folks because of the traumatizing situations that they find themselves in. Not through their own doing, but just by virtue of where they are and how that can manifest in their body. And it can create dis-ease and disease, because now you have dis-ease with what your surroundings are. And now your body, and that's, you know, where they say with the whole cancer thing, that stress and the cells and they multiply and all of those things. And your body doesn't know how to cope with that. And it just amplifies whatever else may be going on or may have been latent in your system. But you add that trauma, and what these kids have to deal with now is, like you said, I don't know. It's a new world. I don't know where, because I was playing with Barbies until I was 14. So nowadays,
girl, I'm still sleeping with stuffed animals for comfort. And these people are finding other bodies to be there just for comfort and safety because of what all they're going through. Like, and that's being real.
Yeah, it's real. Being real. And it shows up like that. And it shows up in different ways. And your body, you know, is telling on you. Now, I know for us, it feels like our body has betrayed us. And I know I've definitely felt that way over the years because I wasn't able to have children and dealt with infertility and all of those things, and as many surgeries as I've had. And I'm like, all this, and I could have, I wish I would have got a baby out of it or something, but it's okay. It worked out how it was supposed to work out, and it provides a platform to talk about different points of entry to have those issues and discussions.
Miss Natalie, you hit a beautiful point right there. Because what I didn't say in regards to those three things, I also, right before surgery, also was diagnosed with polycystic ovary syndrome as well. And it was the irregular periods, thinking that, and they'll give you an excuse of why you didn't see a period as a child. And so I just thought, again, that was normal. It is not. Yeah. And, facial hair and regular periods were my main two. All right. The main two for me that was just there, which I feel like you could have told me this a long time ago. But again, I'm thinking facial hair, like hair in areas that mostly men will get them.
Right.
I see it in my family, my aunt, my mom, and some it was just where they could just pluck. Others, they have to shave, nair, like it's more, out there. And so you say fertility and you had to say, oh, I could at least got a child out of this. So many of us with endometriosis, polycystic ovary syndrome, struggle with depression and frustration at the fact that as a woman, our body is not in the space to do what it is we thought it was supposed to do in order to create.
Yes.
And we're creating. We are definitely creating. And I appreciate my students so much every single year because that's my way of being able to say I got kids. And I love saying I got kids. And when I say my kids, most of the people already know I'm talking about my students because they're my kids. I don't really call them my students. I call them my kids because I care about them. Yeah. I love them. It's a relationship. It's a family vibe. And they know that to a point where I also am proud to say I don't have kids on the summer. I give them back to the people. So I'm kid free on the summer. All the way, and I'm okay with that.
Right.
I'm okay with that. But how did you get to the point where you were okay with saying, I guess this is just not what I'm going to be able to do? Because I want you to speak to those that are frustrated, that are depressed, and they can't really wrap their minds around still loving their body, but at the same time being bitter at the fact that they can see so many other people have these kids, and it's not coming biologically from them.
I would be remiss if I didn't say I still struggle with it. It's ongoing. It never stops. There's no start and end point. I'm a bonus mom of two great kids, 21 and 23. And I'm thankful. And I have a lot of God kids and a lot of, by virtue of, you the mama bear. So I have my own little, cadre and little thing of kids. And they're at the age where I can engage and talk with them, which is wonderful. But in all honesty, nobody knows if they can have kids until they try, and that's the reality. Everybody thinks that everything's going to be working to do what you need to do. When it came to when I was first diagnosed, which was one of the more devastating things for me, and they finally diagnosed me, he was like, well, you probably should just have a hysterectomy. And I was 19 and I was by myself. My parents weren't there. I was in college. And I was like, what? How can you even say that to me? Like, just, which for me to articulate this, it felt like now being in the healthcare disparities space that I'm in, it felt like a verbal sterilization for me. Like, you can't have kids anyway, so let's just cut it off. Let's get rid of your stuff and have a hysterectomy because you probably don't need to be having kids. It was just, that was the vibe. But I was 19. I didn't think about any of that. I mean, I was like, I can't even, it was so devastating to me. And it followed me for years. And then as time progressed, as I got older, I eventually got married and I was in my mid 30s. And, I noticed, I didn't get married until I was like 37. And I hadn't been trying to have kids or anything, but I knew it hadn't happened. There was no oops, there was none of those. And when I went to the doctor, I was like, the decision for me to go to a fertility clinic was something that I toyed with for a long time because I didn't want to face the reality that it was a possibility that I truly couldn't conceive. And when I finally did go to a fertility clinic, they were like, you got a year and a half to harvest your eggs. And after 38, then you're going to have to do other people's eggs, a donation, to get an egg donor. And because you have so much stuff going on, I was told that if you do get pregnant, it's not going to be viable, or it's going to endanger your life and you could die. And that on top of all of the other stuff going on. And then all my friends started having kids. There was a year that a bunch of my friends were pregnant that I didn't respond to any baby announcements. I didn't go to any baby showers because I could not handle it. And then kids are attracted to me. Like, I be minding my business, sitting on whatever, and the baby come over and climb on me, and you're conflicted, and how to deal with that. And it's some days, it's a struggle for me. It's not as much a struggle for me anymore. But there are days that it hits, and it hits hard. I have my nephews and everything, but and it hits like a train, to be completely transparent, that's not something that I was able to do. But I know God worked it out that it wasn't for me. It wasn't in the cards because there's other things that I have. I have a platform. There's different areas that I can go into now that had I had a bunch of children, I wouldn't be in this space necessarily. There's no guarantee that I could be a voice to talk about some of these things. But with the frustration, it's real. It is those nights, the one day I see a commercial with a baby and I just, and I start crying, and I could be crying for hours, and then other days I'm fine. And that's okay. I had to learn to be okay with not being okay. It's a process. And you're right. And that's where journaling comes in. You figure out, well, how can maybe I can hang out and babysit sometimes. And sometimes I can't babysit. And you really have to and it's okay. You don't have to apologize. You don't have to be ashamed if that's how you feel. It's real that there's some jealousy. There's real that there's some resentment. That is real. Those are real feelings that you are going to have. And it's part of the process. It's part of life, because you really don't know. The one thing I will say, that if you want me to get on you and give you a terse word, how come you had no kids? How come you're not pregnant? When are you getting pregnant? My uterus is my business. Now I don't have one anymore, but when I did, my uterus, I don't ask you, well, why are you 30 pounds overweight? It's a personal question. Don't talk about what's going on in my insides. If I'm not going to talk about your overweight behind, or why you're not doing something with your hair, and why you coming out of the house with a bonnet. I don't talk to you about your personal appearance. I don't talk to you about why, you probably should go check your blood pressure. I don't come to you about that. And you being invasive with my conversation. And you're looking at me like I'm crazy because I just told you that's none of your business. Oh, but you'd be such a good mom. I know that. But if I'm not telling you and I'm not going into it, read the room. Read the room. Please. Because now it's going to look like I'm kirking out on you. Because you did not.
And then we have to shut that up to the mood swings.
Yeah, exactly. But, the frustration is real.
It
is real.
I love that. I love that you told us and reminded us that it is real. It's okay to say you're feeling a little resentful. It's okay to say, I'm down to be with the kids today. Nah, I don't feel like babysitting today. It's okay. And I agree with you. Like I got godsons too, and I'm grateful for them. And I always tell my friend, their mom, that I'm thankful. Thank you for having my kids. Like I always say that because I think she knows and she understands how much it means to me to have them and have that relationship with them. So I think that's beautiful, and I'm grateful for it. But I also love being a auntie, because I am good at kids. Great. And I think it's when people say, you're so good with kids, why don't you have any? You know, that's the one for me. Like, you're so
Yeah.
good with kids. Kids love you. When are you going to have your own? That's when it's a little slightly triggering. And then I
Yes.
have to remember I have students, I have
Mm-hmm.
godsons, I have nieces and nephews. It's okay. Giovanni,
Mm-hmm.
you're okay. This is okay. Just enjoy it. Because
Right.
guess what? Having kids comes with a whole nother level of
It really
responsibility, a
does.
whole nother budget type of situation.
It
So
really
it's like
does.
reflecting back on some of the realities of, yeah,
I think
this,
I'm
this,
good.
yeah,
There are
that
days
part.
where I'm
I'm
like,
okay.
God, I said, God, you knew what you was doing. You knew what you were
But
doing.
for me, when you talked about it, going to the fertility clinic, how did you feel even going the first time? Because my OBGYN, this is another special moment, Miss Natalie. My OBGYN, her husband is the excision specialist
Oh,
who has the IVF.
wow.
Right. So I
You
went
had your
from
own little village.
female doctor, girl, the female Dr. Fox to, well, this one in the sorority system.
Mm-hmm.
But the female Dr. Fox into the male Dr. Fox that was, you know, the reproductive specialist,
Mm-hmm.
excision specialist, all of that. Like, going in there, and I'll just say mine, and then you can tell me about yours, because we two different things. You were going in about your eggs. I was going in because that was the next step of diagnosing endometriosis if I was going to go through with having this surgery, because you don't just think you have it. They can't tell you
Right.
about it unless they actually go in
Go
and
in.
say, these are our findings, and you come back to your checkup appointment after surgery, and they give you all of the imaging of what they saw and what was all in there. You got to go get your evidence and not just suspect.
Exactly.
But going in there, seeing all the pictures of the kids, like just navigating from room, and it's a totally different atmosphere in there. I don't know if how yours look, but they make it real homey. They make it real cute and comforting and family oriented. And it's just like,
Yeah.
when you don't have it, it's just like, okay, this is feeling comfortable, but seeing all of this is slightly triggering because I
Yes.
don't know what my answer is going to be. So I know y'all mean well, and you're trying to give us a wall of inspiration,
Right.
but this is starting to make my heart beat a little bit louder, and it's causing me to try to breathe, because most of these appointments I went to by myself. You know,
Me
like,
too.
you going by
Me
yourself,
too.
and you're like, oh my God, like, this is a lot, because I don't know what this at the end of this appointment, what's going to be told, what information I'm going to take out of this. How was it for you, your first time going into this space?
It was very hard. One of my OBGYNs, he was great. He was at Georgetown. He had told me that, you know, and this is when I was in my early 30s, that they wanted to do the little dye test to check what the path was for your eggs and everything, to determine what my options would be. And then he retired. And then his successor was not as, he was more into the research of it, not so much the kid glove handling of the emotional impact of what the conversation was. So that turned me off, and I stopped pursuing anything for a couple years, like 3 or 4 years. And then once I got married, I said, okay, well, still hasn't happened. Let me go to the fertility clinic. And that was a decision that I mulled over for months, probably 6 to 8 months, before I finally made that decision. And then when my doctor had told me they found another fibroid, when they found the fibroids, and he was like, you need to decide. You are in a window right now that you need to decide and go to a fertility specialist to figure out what you're going to do. And that was the nudge. That's what pushed me to go. And so when I finally made the appointment to go to the fertility clinic, and I went by myself, it was surreal. It was an out-of-body experience for me. Because like you said, they make it homey, which is kind of where that whole point of where my business came in, where you make those spaces comfortable for you. That are supposed to be sacred or reassuring for you. And sitting in the waiting room, and the nurses, they were wonderful. My nurse practitioners, my advocate, my navigator, she was great and talked me through everything, called and checked up on me, was great. But sitting in the room, and going into the office is and then sitting in front of the doctors, and they coming back with all my results, and they're like, they were trying, I mean, they delivered in the best way they could, but they were very matter of fact, like, ma'am, you got a year and a half. And because what is going on inside with you right now, we don't know if the eggs are going to stick because you have so much adhesions, you have so much stuff going on, but we can try. And having to sit there and talk to them, and they're like, well, what do you want to do? And you just in the chair, like, I don't even know. My emotions are all over the place. And who has $10,000 to harvest some eggs? I did not. I had just built a home. Right. I had just built a house.
Like from $10,000 to $20,000.
Yes.
For me, it's the pressure. Afterwards, and you calling me, okay, so if you want to have kids, you need to go ahead and hurry up and have kids. And it's like, do you want kids? And it was like, I thought about having kids. I kind of want to see if my genes are strong. Will they look like me? Will they act like me? Do they have a similar personality? Like, I kind of thought about wanting to see what I can do to create something to put in the world. Right. We need to hurry up and have kids. Well, I'm kind of single, and I never really considered, being a single mom by choice. I see that's a hashtag. One of my sorority sisters also has a PCOS journey of strength, and she went through it and had twins. But at that point, that wasn't my choice. The choice wasn't, do I see myself being so adamant about motherhood and wanting a child that I'm going to say, yeah, well, I do want it. Because like you just said, there's a price tag on me having a child and trying to have a child by myself.
Because I'm still going to have to feed these children.
And you got me in the whole 10K up to 20K just to make sure I'm able to have this supportive system to have a child. Right. Like that part. But I'm grateful that you shared that with me. And I'm glad we had similar situations of how we experienced that first interaction in a fertility clinic, trying to still navigate what's going on with our body, because I've actually never had that conversation with anyone. And so thank you for holding that space and allowing us to create that. But let's get into the last two questions, because I can talk to you all day.
Likewise.
So we talked about it a little earlier, and you brought him into conversation, your dad. I would love for you to give some type of insight, some wisdom, some tips to the girl dads or the father figures of young women, and what they could be doing or looking forward to, or how could they just be the best person they could be to be supportive in a young child's life.
Oh my goodness. I would say with me being a daddy's girl, just a quick backstory. When I was 6, I fell off a swing set, and I knocked myself out, and I stopped breathing. My father saved my life. Did CPR on me, brought me back. There was he got a whole life-saving award, and was in the news and in the paper and everything like that. And I think he's always been protective of me, but I think that just kind of leveled it up. So he's always been that much more attentive to me and my sister, both of us. But because of that, my health, I think, has always been paramount for him, to make sure that he's checking on me, always. And there's conversations my father and I will have, like philosophical discussions. It started out when I was younger, it was like lectures, and I was like, oh my God, man, telling me about life. He would see something on TV and what you put in your body and what you need to, and I was big on reading. And during the summers, we got to play, but my parents made sure, like, we had to study our own little Black history. We had for penmanship. They're big in Jamaica. They're big on penmanship. We had to rewrite the little Black history books, and then make a report, and then come back and report to my dad about it. And then we had to talk about it and having those discussions. So those were opportunities where at the time I was like, oh my God, my dad's my mom would come downstairs. She'd be like, Eddie, let the child go upstairs. You've been talking to the child for like 3 hours. But I appreciate that so much now because that laid the groundwork for us to have that relationship. Like, and he would take us out. I'm big into nature and grounding, and I like being outside because my father would take us on trips. He would take us to rose gardens. There were activities that enabled those conversations to happen later in life because the foundation was set by doing different things. He's an artist. Both my parents are artists. And he would paint. We would do he's big into cars. He's a car connoisseur. We would put model cars together. He made sure that my sister and I were self-sufficient. Anything that, like a lot of the stuff in my house that was put together is me. I put it together. I put together my bike when I was little. I put together my bookshelf. I put together anything. And he's a mechanic by trade and, taught us how to build the engine. So those were opportunities that created bonding opportunities and moments so that it was natural that if I got sick, that he was there because that foundation was already there, but it was something that we had to build. And it didn't start, I was sick, or that happened to me, but there were opportunities where we got to know each other. And he instilled in us a sense of empowerment that you can be self-sufficient. You don't need to depend on anybody. It's nice, but these are things that you can do on your own. You can check your oil on your own. You can change a tire. You can do all those things on your own. And it was a sense of empowerment for me that allowed me to also have those conversations with him that intersected with, why do you think you need to equip yourself with asking yourself these questions and instilling self-confidence in me so I could speak out on certain things, and a level of comfortability that was able to be generated and nurtured for when I did not feel well. It was seamless for him to be supportive of me because he was supportive of me in so many other aspects and their words of affirmation were huge. My father is big on that. He's like, he tells me all the time. He's like, I'm so proud of you girls. And he brags about us. And I realize that's not everybody's situation, and I understand that. And I'm very blessed to have that. But there are other male figures in my life, my other uncles and stuff, that were just as encouraging for me. And they would see my dad do it, and I've seen them do it for some of their children as well, and my cousins. So you see those positive reinforcements, how in whatever way it can come, and that built the opportunity and held the space for him to be able to have those conversations and step in and be that nurturer. And because I also saw him, how he treats my mom, and I realized also that I think sometimes when I talk about that, I may be the exception to the rule, and that may not be normal because of how society exacts its judgment on our Black men and our fathers, and enabling them to be fathers and enabling them a soft space, a vulnerable space to be there for their daughters, which unfortunately society does not encourage as it should, because there's so many other things our Black men have to deal with, and just stepping out the front door, and then they have to deal with and figure out, how can I protect my baby girl? How do I protect me as a man? How do I protect who the women are in my life while still being strong? And because I have to deal with everything that's going on in the world, how do they switch that? It's not a light switch for some men, because it has to be taught, or you have to figure out how to learn, and you educate yourself. And my father, he reads a lot, and there's certain things that he's brought into the fray that has enabled him to do this. He's very spiritual. I wouldn't say my father's not religious. He's very spiritual, but it doesn't just come to you, in conversations that you have with other men. And I would say that is one thing I would say for other men, to hold a space to have those conversations on how to talk to your daughters, how to engage with your daughters, how to find a common ground to hang out with your daughters or something. you know, because so that they know how to be treated should you decide to engage in a relationship with a man or a woman or whatever you decide to do, but still understand how to be treated and speak up for yourself. And that's a journey, you know, that's a journey. And, you know, instilling that and having that space. And you also think about whatever trauma those, you know, your father figures may have had, that they don't have the tools to even enter in those conversations. So they need grace as well to understand or talk about or broach those topics, to talk about what is this like. You know, some guys, because they have sisters, it just kind of came part and parcel with their upbringing. But those that don't have sisters and or don't have a mom in their life, or a positive female role model in some way, shape, or form that makes them feel safe and vulnerable enough to have those conversations, to engage with those conversations with the young ladies in their life and the daughters and nieces. You know, there's so many dynamics. But I think creating those spaces.
I agree. I love your approach to that question. Like I've never heard it be answered that way, but again, I knew it was going to be beautiful when you brought your dad into it earlier in the conversation. My dad wasn't a part of my life growing up. So when you said uncles, that resonated. Yeah. Like my uncles, my granddaddy, major forces to be reckoned with. And then one uncle came to mind. Well, two of my uncles came to mind when you talk about the lecturing of your daddy. And yes. Like as a child, you're like, oh Lord, here you go. Like sometimes me and my cousins would like try to hide our faces in pillows to like try to laugh when you're being so serious. And we're like, here you go. But knowing now, I feel the same way when I'm trying to talk to my kids and I'm trying to like speak life into them and let them know what's really going on. And they're probably like, here go Miss Ford. Here she go again, you know? So a lot of things kind of resonated with me. But I love the fact that you said if you're already creating the bond, just continue to nurture the bond with your girl. So when anything happens, whether it is a health challenge or it is where they fell off the swing and blacked out and you have to save their life. Like now you're at a point where your mom gave you life and your dad gave you life in the life that you have. And that's a beautiful testimony to be able to have, especially as a daddy's girl. But being there through it all means that you're willing to still be there when it's things you don't know about. But then again, I love that you said, give yourself grace because you don't have the tools. But that's also not saying give yourself grace because you don't have the tools. We're giving yourself grace while you don't have the tools, while you go find the spaces to go get the tools when you're, you know, in areas with other men to talk about how we're really out here raising our girls. And I love that you say, so they know how to act when they're in a relationship with another man or choose to be another. They know how to actually hold relationships and have healthy relationships because you're prioritizing your relationship with your daughter. And I think, like you said, society plays a huge role in that when you want to be in difficult situations where you can't really show up for your child without all the extraness that's happening, that we don't really center around the child being the child. But I just love that because when the bond is real, the support will be real, and there's nothing that can't be discussed or talked about. And that's beautiful. And I like that. That's how you approach that question, because sometimes people feel like it's, oh, I got to go educate myself on the female body, or, oh, I have to go educate myself on the certain products I need to go purchase my child. So I know what I'm getting at the grocery store and I know what she shouldn't have and what she should have when it comes to that. No, you started from a whole different aspect, which makes sense anyway, because, you know, you are who you are and you're all about empowerment in sacred spaces and a public health analyst, but you got a whole vibe of how you navigate through life. So being able to start with relationship and bonding, I think was beautiful. And I think because you were able to see those at such an early age, having healthy relationships with your parents and your family, just being supportive when you didn't even know what was really going on, that shows up in your adult life. And it shows up in how you're able to be resilient. And we haven't used that word, but that's pretty much like if you look in the dictionary, Natalie should be a picture, right? in there's an image. You Google on Google and you click on images. She should be on one of the first two rows of images.
And one thing I want to say real quick too about the space, you know, shout out to my mom because she has been the type, she's a force. My mother is amazing. My grandfather passed away when she was 17, and she ended up becoming like, and she's one of 9, and her older sister had left and moved on, got married. And so my mom ended up being like the matriarch of the family. And all my uncles and aunts and uncles have lived with us at some time when they've come from Jamaica. But she was able to create a space that my father felt safe enough to be that man with her. And I think that cannot go without being said, because it is a partnership, and it is a truly spiritual partnership between my parents. But my mom was able to create a space that made my father feel comfortable enough to be able to engage with his daughters enough to get to the point where we are now. And I think that's something that I don't know if that's necessarily always spoken to, because you create that space, that safe space. My mom is that safe space for my dad, and vice versa. But it enables him to be empowered enough to talk to his daughters in such a way that, you know, of course, with anything, you know, you always don't get along. There's a lot of stuff I don't tell my parents, you know, obviously, because there's certain cultural things as a girl that you're not supposed to do and all the other stuff, whatever. But it created that space because my mom gave him that space to be vulnerable enough to let down his guard, to treat her in such a way that she clearly is the queen of the family and we're the princesses, and that landscape and level setting for us, for him to engage with my sister and I like that. Because, you know, and I think that I would be remiss if I didn't point that out, because you have to, he doesn't operate in a silo, you know, at all. So I definitely had to, you know, give moms props for that, for sure. You know,
I think what I absolutely love about that is the fact that not only are we talking about problems and overcoming problems, but you're also giving so much light and love to parenthood. You know, we talk about our struggles of the natural, what it looks like for parenting, or being able to, I guess, experience parenting. But then we're talking about how your parents approach parenthood and how it's helped shape you for who you are and allowed you to go and navigate through your journeys of strength thus far. And I love that, because I don't think we've seen that type of theme going on yet in an episode when it comes to like parenthood.
Yeah.
And when you have a mom and a dad that's instilling a nurturing bond and relationship, look at who you are today. Natalie, like, you couldn't have been who you are today if it
Without
wasn't
him.
for them to be. Exactly. And there's so many of us that had to go with the single parent household, you know, and to have to navigate and find that source of resilience and strength. But I love that you were able to give your parents their flowers and show them who they really are and be able to speak about them the way you were today. And I love that you were able to honor them like that. I mean, because you are a product of them. You are their legacy to the world. And I love that you take so much pride into that, and that you were able to share that experience. And maybe that'll motivate, encourage, inspire, but most importantly, our favorite word, empower people who do have kids to continue to show up and take that role of parenting serious.
Yes.
As well as we shouted out our uncles and our grandparents, because it does truly take a village, and your role doesn't have to be the father to still be good to a female in your life or someone that you love. You also talked about having brothers, you know, having a brother and you're a sister, how you show up when you see your sister struggling or knowing what's going on with their menstrual cycle. That matters. Like, it's stuff that we shouldn't dilute and take away when you're addressing a whole person, because it's just a holistic lifestyle. Like, when you start trying to separate and cut off, you can't just do that. That ain't real.
No, it's not. It's not. It's not. It's a system. It's a system.
All the way. So thank you for that. All right. So final question, and then I'll let you go. Man, we could definitely
we'll be here all day.
We will. Last question. If you could have a meal with any historical figure, who would it be and what would you all eat?
Probably Dr. Maya Angelou. And oxtail. I love
the Jamaican. The Jamaican. Why wouldn't I believe it would be some oxtail?
That
Go
or
ahead.
ackee and saltfish. Those are my
Mm.
two favorite meals that it is just like a hug for me. And I don't eat them often. The ackee and saltfish, which is a national dish for Jamaica, breakfast dish for Jamaica, is fish and stuff. But that oxtail, when I tell you, my mom will call me, she would like freeze it and send it to me. Like it's something that is an indulgence for me that I only have once in a while. I don't eat it regularly, but probably that. And then I have some ackee and saltfish too, you know, and if I want to be a little healthier, and then go to maybe
What
but
y'all drinking?
sorrel
Mm.
for sure, which is a drink from the basis of the hibiscus plant, hibiscus flower mixed with ginger. And oh my mom makes it, and it's just like I get it at Christmas time, girl. I put it in the fridge. I said, don't touch this. It's not regular juice. You cannot. You can have a little bit. Just
I like it. You're the second person I think that went with that drink of choice. I believe you're
oh
the
really?
second one. Yes, and I think that's dope because we have like a little under 30 episodes, and you're the second one. They like that hibiscus. I haven't had it, so I'm gonna have to try it because y'all are talking about it. Why Maya? Why Dr. Maya Angelou?
She has had a life that has been transformational for her on so many levels. You know, I know Why the Caged Bird Sings, her life, her poetry, her realness about what she's been through, her raw authenticity about her trials, tribulations, her triumphs have been amazing to me. And I think how her delivery is just inspiring to me. Her goal for you to see what you bring to the table, seeing the amazing power that you have within yourself, is definitely something to aspire to. Even though she, and she's been through it, but she's still, still I rise, that just in and of itself, and phenomenal woman, and that self-talk, but all that she had to go through to get to that, is just amazing to me. And her sense of, she's witty, and and her quips and her sense of humor and what she's seen in the Harlem Renaissance, the thought leaders that she's been able to discuss things with. And it's just, she was a dancer, and knowing Catherine Dunham, and like, it's just, her life is just an amazing anthology of being a woman, and divorce and life and love and childbirth and miscarriages and assaults, and it's just a whole cornucopia of life. And I think then with her poetry and how it can speak to you on different levels after all of her novels, and just how her being an orator and her little sassiness when she talks, and I just love it. I would just sit there and be like, what, yeah, okay, it's I think that she's just a beacon of resilience,
all the way.
All the way.
All the way. So we Googled resilience, and she'll be on the first row, and then
yes,
you'll be on the second row. Gotcha. Yeah. I'm with it all the way. I'm with it all the way. So Miss Natalie, I've absolutely loved being able to share this space with you, being able to navigate through your journey of strength. And I'm so grateful that we were able to even have this moment, and then have it on the recording day is the second day of endometriosis awareness month. I'm excited that this episode gets to air this month on the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. But most importantly, I'm so grateful that I got to share you with my listeners now and for those that are coming. Like, you are just a beacon of resilience, love, light, but most importantly, healing. And we talked about, like, even you doing like your healing retreats and being able to experience all of that. And we won't go into all of that now, but it's just so much that I love about what you're doing as you're navigating through life's journeys. And now you're evolving as a person, but most importantly, how you're evolving within your healing space. And that's what this is all about, is empowering people to heal and have their healing journey be their journey. And we're just here to drop inspiration and knowledge of what we've experienced, how we're healing. But y'all, we just want you to take your healing journey and be intentional about it and affirm what it is that you believe and what you expect for your life. But Miss Natalie, tell them all about you, where they can find you, what all you got going on. And then we'll get ready to close this thing out. But give them just a little motivation on their healing too on your way out, as if you didn't already. Just give them a little tip. They're hesitant. Tell them where they can get started.
Well, first, let me say, Giovanni, I love you for opening this opportunity to me. I never thought a couple years ago that I would be speaking on different platforms about what it is that I've been going through and that I'm living through. And the point is through, that I'm getting through it. That I'm in a space that I found my voice to speak to others that are feeling, experiencing, or adjacent to similar situations, that they can provide some sort of help and care to others that are in their space, and that is something that to be an ally is huge. I cannot stress the importance of being an ally to others in your space, because when I tell you, it is so important to be an ally, because those support services, those support networks get you through to that next place where you can heal. And being an ally to somebody else, or just telling your story. I never thought telling my story in this way would be an inspiration, or I'm just talking about all the trials and tribulations. And at one point, I will say, it's not, there's a difference between complaining and sharing your story, and making sure that you understand that you're not complaining, you're sharing how you're getting through, what it is that you're getting through, and understand that you are more than a conqueror, and that you have within yourself so much potential, so much fire that you just haven't tapped into yet to overcome what it is that you do. You don't, there's one of the quotes, I think, by Bob Marley: you don't know how strong you need to be until you have to be. And that probably is my mantra for my life, because I did not know that I was going to have to deal with the stuff that I was dealing through until I was in it. And you come through and you're like, wow. Even the other day, I'd written down all the stuff that I've been through, and I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But I'm still here. And there's a reason for that. And I thank you, and I love you for allowing me to share that on this platform with others as we go into Endo Month, Endometriosis Awareness Month, and as we forge ahead and educate and become advocates and for ourselves, and educate yourselves and share and talk about it. And invite people into that space and hold space for other folks to engage and understand, and really embrace and see who you are, so that you can help others be seen and you can help others to be heard, is so invaluable. And, your voice, you may not think you're saying anything, but there's people that are listening to you. And I just want to say thank you. You can find me. My website is Natalie Solomon-Brimage.me. For those that need to get in touch with me, that's Natalie A. Solomon. That's all O's, like in the Bible. Brimage, BRIMAGE.me. And that website will get you to all my other information. It gets you to my Empowerment Collective site, my overall Meraki Life and Style site. It'll get you to some other informations that I've done, some other presentations I've done about my other tagline for what I do is securing your oxygen mask first. That right there is one of the mantras that I use as a thread through a lot of my presentations, through all my presentations. You have to secure your oxygen mask first. You have to take care of yourself before you pour into anyone else. You have to. We need to, and that's where self-talk comes in, self-care comes in, and self-love comes in, to make sure you show up for yourself before anybody else. And it's not selfish. It's not selfish. You have to take care of yourself. You have to be mindful how you talk to yourself. You have to be mindful of how you show up unapologetically at that for yourself, because you cannot rely. Everybody else has their own battles they're fighting. They really do. And you can't hold that against people, because no one's coming to save you but yourself. You got to remember that and take care of yourself. And feel free to reach out, hit me up, if you need me to come and talk or facilitate. Or I'm planning a retreat in June in St. Croix, a wellness retreat. One of many I anticipate going forward, that's going to have different focus on different areas of our life as we go through. I'm working on my curriculum for that now, and really just take heed and really understand and take inventory of what you bring to the table. And it's more than you think. Give yourself some credit, give yourself grace. And that's a huge one. I'm big on grace. Give yourself grace, because you can't be everything to everybody. That's just not possible. But
and then still be something for yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I love that you said it. It's self first, not selfish. Always. Yes. Always. Mm-hmm. All right, y'all. Well, her email, her website is also going to be linked in the description of this video. Y'all get ready, tap in, connect, link up, because you might want to be at that wellness retreat in St. Croix. You already heard her. She's intentional about her healing. You know what she had to get herself through. Nobody but her first had to get her through the things that she went through. Thank you for your journey of strength, Natalie. Thank you for just being you. But most importantly, thank you for vibing with me today.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me vibe.
No problem at all. Y'all, anything that you see in the description of this video, guide-wise, that you feel like will help you on your healing journey, please make sure you get that free guide, whether it's the plant-based alternative guide, whether it's you having endometriosis or PCOS, and you kind of want to figure out how should you go about managing the things that you control, like she said, when it comes to lifestyles and healthy habits. Get it, figure it out, how you want to do it, how you want to use it, and then link up with either one of us to see if we're someone that can truly support you in whatever it is that you're going through. Because based on our experiences, we can come to you with what we know is already being experienced through what we have going on. So we're at least qualified to tell you about our journey. Right. So y'all, thank you again for tuning in to the Empowered Plates, Empowered Lives podcast. We love you. We appreciate you. Keep going. And remember, it's your healing. It's your journey. Go get it. Be well.